daughter-in-law. That fridge is mine. Buy your own food. My shocking surprise made her cry.
Welcome to our story family. That is mine mother-in-law. From now on, buy your own food. Rachel's words fell over me like freezing water in the middle of a cold Chicago dawn. It was 3 a.m. on a Sunday. I had just returned after 24 continuous hours at Chicago General Hospital, 24 hours of holding trembling hands, cleaning wounds that were not mine, and witnessing the death of a 7-year-old boy and an 82-year-old grandmother. My feet were burning inside those white nursing shoes that had once been new 5 years ago. My back was a knot of pain that no painkiller could undo. My hands smelled like iodine and that kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones when you have been saving lives for 37 years. I am 65 years old. I am an emergency room nurse, and I thought the hardest part of my life had already passed. I was wrong. When I opened the door to my kitchen, the one I cleaned 1,000 times, where I cooked for every one of Vince's birthdays, where I cried over the death of my husband Richard 20 years ago, I saw something that made no sense. A new shiny silver Samsung refrigerator right next to mine. I stood paralyzed in the doorway, my nursing bag hanging heavily from my shoulder, trying to process the image. They had bought a refrigerator without telling me. What for? When ours worked perfectly, I had bought it just 3 years ago with my Christmas bonus. Then I heard her voice. That one is mine. Rachel Miller came out of the hallway with that face I already knew too well, that mix of disdain and boredom, as if I were an annoying fly in her space. She was wearing a silk nightgown, pink silk, in my house, where I wore old hospital t-shirts, and she had perfectly wavy hair falling over her shoulders. Her nails were freshly painted bright red. I vaguely wondered, when she had found the time to go to the salon, how much she had spent, and with whose money. "What did you say?" My voice sounded raspy. I had gone hours without talking to anyone outside the hospital, only giving medical orders with that automatic efficiency you develop after decades in the emergency room. The refrigerator is mine. She crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe with a studied casualness. From now on, buy your own food, Carol. She did not call me mother-in-law. She did not call me Mrs. Carol. She called me by my first name, as if we were roommates, as if this were not my house. The house I bought all by myself in 2003, when the South Side neighborhood was still developing and nobody wanted to live here. The house I paid off over 15 years by working triple shifts, cleaning hospital floors at 3 a.m. and selling baked goods on weekends when the money was not enough. With trembling hands, not from fear but from pure exhaustion, I opened my refrigerator. The old one. Mine. The air escaped from my chest. Everything, absolutely everything I had bought 3 days prior had yellow sticky notes with her name written in thick black marker. Rachel. The cheddar cheese I used to buy at Al's convenience store. The fresh bagels made by the lady at the farmer's market. The whole milk. The premium cocoa powder for my hot morning drink. The avocados I had selected one by one, squeezing them gently to make sure they were perfectly ripe. The tomatoes, the onions, the chicken, the ground beef, the baked beans, in their plastic container, even the butter. Every single item, every damn item that I had paid for with my nursing salary had her name on it. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the hum of the refrigerator. "Exactly what I told you." Rachel shrugged with rehearsed indifference. "This is my food. You buy your own. It is not fair that I have to share what I buy with my money." Her money. Rachel did not work. She had not worked a single day since she married my son 18 months ago. Vince was the one supposedly bringing in the money, although lately that money seemed to come out of my own savings every time they asked to borrow for gas, for groceries, or for some emergency that was never fully explained. Vince. I tried to call my son, but my voice broke halfway through his name. He was already there at the door of his bedroom, the room that had been his since he was 8 years old, the one I painted sky blue because it was his favorite color when he had a fever and chronic asthma, spending whole days in bed, looking at me with those eyes I no longer recognized. The same eyes that looked at me with unconditional love when he was a little boy, when he would wake up in the middle of the night unable to breathe, and I would run with his nebulizer when he cried, because the other kids made fun of his inhaler, when he hugged me after every asthma attack and whispered, "Thank you, Mommy," against my neck. Now there was only discomfort in those eyes, guilt perhaps, but above all, evasion. "Mom, do not make drama." The words came out without him looking directly at me, his eyes fixed on some point over my left shoulder. Drama. The word came out of me louder than I intended. "Vince, there are labels with your wife's name on the food that I bought." Rachel is right. He scratched the back of his neck, that gesture he always made when he was uncomfortable. Everyone should buy their own stuff. It is more organized this way, much clearer. I felt the floor moving beneath my feet, that dizziness I knew so well from so many hours standing at the hospital. But this was different. This was not physical fatigue. This was something much deeper, breaking inside of me. But I bought this. My voice became small and I hated myself for it. I paid for the groceries this week just like I have paid for the groceries every week for the last 18 months that you two have lived here. And that is why it has her name on it. No. Rachel said, pointing at the yellow labels with a casual flick of her perfectly manicured hand. Now we all know whose is whose. It is easier. It is more fair. Fair. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip off every single yellow label and throw them right in her face. I wanted to ask her if they knew how many times I had worked double shifts to pay for Vince's asthma treatments when he was a kid. If they remembered the $250,000 his emergency surgery cost when he was 11 and almost died from a severe respiratory attack. If they had any idea that I sold my car, an old Honda Civic that I loved, and my engagement ring to pay that hospital bill, but I was so tired, so terribly, deeply tired, I just nodded. I went to my room with my legs shaking. I closed the door, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. They lived in my house. In the house I bought all by myself with my nursing salary after Richard died and left me with nothing but debts from his failed auto parts business and a 13-year-old son with chronic asthma. I worked double shifts, triple shifts. I scrubbed hospital floors at 3 a.m. to earn extra cash. I skipped meals, not by choice, but because there was not enough money for Vince to have his medications, his albuterol, his steroid inhalers, his monthly visits to the pulmonologist at the specialty clinic. And now they were charging me to eat in my own kitchen. I took off my shoes. My feet were swollen and red with fresh blisters on both heels. I could not even remember when I got them. Sometime between 3 p.m. yesterday and 3 a.m. today, between the patient with a gunshot wound to the chest and the 70-year-old woman with a heart attack. I heard laughter in the living room. Rachel and Vince were watching television, the familiar sound of some late-night talk show. I heard the microwave. I smelled the aroma of buttered popcorn that I could not eat because it had her name on it. I sat on the edge of my bed, the very same bed I had shared with Richard for 18 years. The same one where I held him when he was coughing up blood that last night. The same one where I cried alone for months after his death, and I looked at my hands, nurse hands, hands that had saved lives, that had held newborn babies, that had closed the eyes of the dead, that had worked without rest for 37 years. Hands that were trembling now, not from old age, but from something I could not quite name yet. Something between rage and an awakening. I closed my eyes, and in that silence, in that darkness of my own room, something inside of me began to shift. I did not know it. I still could not give it a shape or a name, but I felt a displacement, like tectonic plates moving under the surface right before an earthquake. Because here is the truth that nobody tells you about getting older. It is not your age that makes you invisible. It is the moment you allow others to decide that you no longer matter. And I had allowed far too much. 3 days later, I returned from another shift at the hospital. This time, it was only 12 hours, but they had been 12 brutal hours. A 9-year-old girl with third-degree burns over 70% of her body. Her mother had left a pot of boiling water on the edge of the stove. An old man who died of a heart attack while I held his hand because his family had not arrived in time and nobody should ever die alone. A traffic accident on the interstate with 4 victims, 2 of them children. I came back home wanting nothing but a hot shower, a cup of hot tea with some toast and silence. That kind of silence that heals, not the kind that hurts. I walked into the bathroom. My bathroom, the only one in the house when I bought it, the one I had remodeled 5 years ago by selling my antique coin collection that my father had left me, and there they were. More yellow sticky notes on the aloe vera shampoo I bought at the local drugstore, on the Dove soap, on the Colgate toothpaste, on the deodorant, on my toothbrush. No, that one did not have a label. It was the last thing I had left unmarked, like a mocking reminder that I still existed, even on the toilet paper. The toilet paper had a yellow label with Rachel's name on it. I walked out of the bathroom with weak legs and I went straight to the kitchen. My hands trembled as I opened the cabinets, one by one, as if I were discovering my house for the first time. The pots had labels, the pans, the glasses, the plates. My white ceramic plates that I had bought at the local flea market 15 years ago when Vince was 18 and had just started studying mechanical engineering at the State University. I opened the silverware drawer, the forks, the knives, the spoons, everything marked with that bright yellow and that name written in black marker. Rachel. Are you looking for something? Rachel's voice sounded right behind me. I had not heard her walk in. I startled, almost dropping the fork I had in my hand, a fork with her name on it. Rachel, this is just too much. My voice came out firmer than I expected, and something in my tone made her narrow her eyes. Too much. She tilted her head with that smile that never reached her eyes. Carol, I am just protecting my things. You know how it is. Sometimes things get lost, they get mixed up. This way we all know whose is whose. It is just common sense. But I bought these pots. My voice rose in spite of myself. I bought these plates 20 years ago. These forks are from my wedding. Richard and I received them as a wedding gift. Oh, she shrugged with a studied lack of concern. Then put your name on them too. I put mine on what is mine. It is fair right equality. Something in me snapped. Not in the dramatic way you see in soap operas, not with screaming or tears. It was much quieter than that, much more definitive. And what exactly did you buy, Rachel? The words came out cold, precise, just like when I have to deliver a difficult diagnosis at the hospital, without emotion, just the facts. Her eyes narrowed. For the first time since I met her, I saw something resembling insecurity cross her face, but it vanished quickly, replaced by that mask of superiority she wore so well. Watch your tone, mother-in-law. The word mother-in-law sounded like a complete insult. I am your son's wife. I deserve respect. Respect. That word echoed in my head as she turned around and walked back to the living room, where the television was still blaring at full volume. I could hear Vince laughing at something on the screen, that sound that used to fill me with joy and now only produced something bitter in my throat. That night, Rachel cooked. The smell invaded the whole house. Homemade lasagna. My famous lasagna, the one I had taught her how to make in those early months after the wedding, when we still pretended to be a happy family, when she still called me Mom, with something resembling affection, when Vince still hugged me and said, "Thank you for accepting Rachel." Mom, I know it is not easy sharing the house. The aroma of the rich tomato sauce mixed with the garlic, the oregano, the melted cheese floated up the stairs all the way to my bedroom. My stomach was growling. I had not had dinner. At the hospital, I had only drank black coffee 1 cup after another, burning my tongue, because I never had time to let it cool down. I thought about going downstairs to serve myself a little bit. It was my lasagna. She had used my recipe, the ingredients I bought every month at the farmer's market, the baking dish my mother gave me when I got married. But I did not do it. I could not. Not after the sticky notes, not after understanding that every bite I took from that kitchen would be another defeat, a silent acceptance that in my own house I was a guest, a burden, a nuisance. I stayed in my room, lying on my bed, staring at the ceiling, knowing every crack, every water stain that I had tried to repair for years but never had enough money to do the full job. And I listened. Their voices came through crystal clear from the living room. They were not whispering. Why would they have to? I was invisible after all, a ghostly presence in my own home. When we sell your mom's car, we could save up for that hotel in Miami. Rachel's voice was light and casual, as if she were talking about the weather. My car, the red Ford Fiesta, I had bought 5 years ago, the only luxury I had allowed myself after decades of sacrifice. The car I needed to get to the hospital because the subway at 5 in the morning was dangerous and unreliable. Silence. I do not even know if she wants to sell it. Vince's voice sounded weak, hesitant. Oh, honey. Rachel's tone became sweet, persuasive. That car is already old. She barely uses it. Only to go to the hospital, and she could easily take the bus. We need it more. We could get a better one, a newer one for both of us. I did not hear what my son replied. I only heard that he did not defend me. He did not say, "No, that is my mom's car." He did not say, "She needs it for work." He did not say, "After everything she has done for me, the least she deserves is her car." He did not say anything. And that silence hurt more than any word. The next morning, I went downstairs early. I had the day off, my first one in 2 weeks. I needed to talk to Vince alone without her, without that presence that had become like toxic smoke in my house. I found him in the kitchen drinking my coffee from my Italian espresso maker that I had bought on a trip to New York when Vince was 5 years old, before everything got so difficult. An espresso maker that I now noticed with a sharp pang also had a yellow sticky note on it. "Son, we need to talk." He looked up. I saw the dark circles under his eyes, more pronounced than before. He looked tired, older than his 33 years. He had gained weight in recent months. His face was rounder, his belly pressing against the Chicago Bulls t-shirt I gave him for his last birthday. "Mom, if this is about the labels..." "It is not just about the labels, Vince." I sat across from him, my hands on the table, trying to stay calm. "It is about everything. It is about how you both speak to me, about how you treat me. This is my house. I know. Do you really know that..." I took a deep breath, trying to control the trembling in my voice, because it does not seem like it. "You two live here. You do not pay rent. You do not pay utilities. You do not pay the property taxes, or the water, or the electricity, or the gas, or the internet. Nothing. And now it turns out that I cannot even use my own soap, my own food, my own pots, without seeing your wife's name on absolutely everything." He rubbed his face, that gesture of frustration he had inherited from his father. "Mom, Rachel is my wife. I have to support her. If you do not like how she handles things, maybe..." He stopped, but I knew what he was going to say. "Maybe what Vince... Maybe you should think about finding your own place." The world stopped. The hum of the refrigerator, the chirping of the birds outside, the distant sound of traffic on the interstate, everything disappeared. Only that phrase remained suspended in the air between us like poisonous smoke. "My own place," I repeated slowly, making sure I had heard him correctly. "In my house. You want me to find my own place. I do not mean it in a bad way," he rushed to say, but he would not look me in the eyes. "But we are a young couple. We need our space privacy. We cannot always be thinking about whether it bothers you how we organize the house, how we live. My house, Vince. My house." I already know it is legally your house, Mom." His tone became irritated, defensive. "You do not have to repeat it all the time as if we did not know. But it is also where I live, where my wife lives. And frankly, sometimes I feel like Rachel is right." "Right about what?" "You are very old-fashioned. You do not understand how modern families work. Everything has to be your way under your rules. My house, my food, my things. It is exhausting, Mom." I stood up. My legs were shaking, but I stood my ground. I did not say another word. What could I say to my son? The son I carried in my womb for 9 difficult months. The son who almost died. 3 times from asthma. The son for whom I sold everything of value I owned. The son who used to hug me and say that I was the best mom in the world. That son had just told me to find another place to live in my very own home. I went upstairs to my room. I closed the door. I stood there for a moment, trying to breathe, trying not to collapse. Then I went to the closet. I pulled out a cardboard box I had not opened in years, a box I kept in the highest corner behind my old nursing scrubs. Inside were photos. Vince as a baby so tiny he fit in my 2 hands. Vince at 2 years old with that curly hair that later turned straight. Vince at 5, his first school picture, smiling with those baby teeth that were falling out one after another. Vince at 8 with his nebulizer in his hand, those huge eyes full of fear every time he could not breathe. Vince at 11 in the hospital bed after the emergency surgery, with tubes coming out of his chest, but smiling because he had survived. Vince at his high school graduation. Vince on his first day of college. Vince on the day he introduced me to Rachel 3 years ago, his eyes shining in a way I had not seen since he was a little boy. "Mom, she is special. I love her. I know you will love her too." I ran my fingers over the photographs, all of them a bit faded by time, some with bent corners, from being looked at so much. And for the first time in years, I did not feel love. I felt something colder, something more dangerous. I felt clarity because my son had just told me to find another place to live in the house I bought with the money I earned, caring for sick people, while he slept peacefully, knowing that his mother would never ever let him fall. I put the photos away, closed the box, put it back in the closet, and for the first time since Rachel placed that first yellow sticky note, I knew exactly what to do. I took out my cell phone. My hands were no longer shaking. I searched on Google Family Eviction Lawyer Chicago. Several names appeared. Arthur Pierce, office downtown, and the Loop Specialist in Family and Civil Law. Good reviews, professional, direct, efficient. I dialed the number before I could regret it. A young professional female voice answered. "Pierce Law Firm, good morning." "Good morning." My voice sounded firm, surprisingly firm. "I need an urgent appointment. I want to evict someone from my property." "Are they a tenant?" "No." I paused. "It is my son." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Then with the same professionalism, but perhaps with a softer touch. "I understand, ma'am. When can you come in? Tomorrow, if possible?" "Let me check." "Yes, we have an opening at 11 in the morning. Does that work for you?" "I will be there." I hung up. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the phone in my hand, processing what I had just done. I had taken the first step. That night, I went downstairs for dinner. Rachel and Vince were in the living room, their plates on the coffee table, more yellow sticky notes on the plates, of course watching some series on Netflix. "Do you still want me to make something?" I asked from the kitchen, my voice neutral, almost polite. They turned around, surprised. I had spent days barely speaking to them, barely coming out of my room except to go to work. "Yeah, whatever is fine," Vince said. He looked confused by my change in attitude. "Perfect," I smiled. "I will make you some scrambled eggs and toast. It will be ready in a minute." I saw them exchange glances that silent communication couples have. Rachel narrowed her eyes, suspecting something, but she did not say a word. I made dinner. I set the table. I even washed the dishes when we finished. Rachel tried to talk to me while I washed, her tone falsely casual. "Are you okay, Carol? You have been very quiet lately." "Very well." I answered, without turning around my hands in the soapy water. I just realized that you guys are right. I have been very tense. I apologize for that. I am glad you understand. Her voice took on that tone of superiority I knew so well. In the end, we all want what is best for the family, right? Of course we do. I answered, looking her right in the eyes for the first time in days. What is best for the family? I went up to my room, closed the door, and for the first time in weeks, I slept deeply without nightmares, without that knot in my stomach, because wars are not won by the person who yells the loudest. They are won by the one who strikes when the enemy lowers their guard. And tomorrow my war was starting a war that they did not even know they had already lost. Monday dawned gray over Chicago with that fine drizzle that soaks you without you realizing it, the kind that gets into your bones and makes you feel the deepest cold. But I did not feel cold. I felt something completely different. Determination. I woke up at 6 in the morning, like always. I put on my nursing scrubs, the navy blue pants, the jacket with my name embroidered on it, Carol Miller, emergency room nurse, and I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me had aged over these past 18 months. New wrinkles around the eyes, more gray hairs peeking through at the temples, even though I dyed them religiously every month. But there was something different in my eyes this morning. It was no longer the tired, defeated look of the last few months. It was the look of a woman who had made a decision. I walked down the stairs in silence. Vince and Rachel were still sleeping. They never woke up before 10, and the house was wrapped in that specific silence of a Chicago dawn, interrupted only by the distant chirping of birds and the occasional sound of a car passing down the street. I did not eat breakfast. I could not eat anything out of that refrigerator full of yellow sticky notes without my stomach turning. I left the house at 6:45. My appointment with Attorney Pierce was at 11, but first I had to go to the hospital. Not to work, I had requested the day off, but to talk to Patty. I found Patty in the nurse's break room drinking her morning black coffee. Patty Barnes, 58 years old, a nurse for 40 years, my best friend, since I started working at Chicago General 25 years ago. A heavily built woman with a loud laugh and an even stronger heart. Carol. She stood up immediately upon seeing me. "You are not working today. What happened?" I sat across from her, and for the first time I told her everything. The yellow sticky notes, the conversation about selling my car, Vince telling me to find my own place, Rachel acting like she owned my house, the 18 months of living like a stranger in my own home. Patty listened in silence, her face shifting through various expressions, surprise, indignation, rage. When I finished, she took my hands across the table. "Carol, what are you going to do?" "I already did it." I took a deep breath. "I hired a lawyer. I'm going to see him today. I'm kicking them out of my house." I expected her to tell me I was overreacting, that families have problems, that I should try talking more. But Patty knew me better than anyone. "Good," she said firmly. "It is about time. That girl is a viper, and your son, forgive me, Carol, but your son is a coward." The words hurt because they were true. "I need you to do me a favor." I took out my phone. "Does your cousin still work in forensic accounting?" "Yes, why?" "Because I found something. Vince has money coming into his bank account every month, a lot of money. And I do not know where it is coming from." Patty narrowed her eyes. "Send me what you have. I will have him look at it today." At exactly 11 o'clock, I was sitting in a worn leather chair across from Attorney Arthur Pierce's desk. His office was in an old historic building in the Loop, downtown Chicago. High ceilings, thick walls, those huge windows with wooden frames that had watched more than a century pass by. The kind of place that makes you feel history carries weight, that the decisions you make here actually matter. Attorney Pierce was a man in his 50s, with gray hair combed perfectly straight back, thin-rimmed glasses, and a suit that had seen better days, but still maintained a certain elegance. He had the kind of face that inspires trust, wrinkled by experience, not by age, with eyes that looked directly at you and made you feel that he was truly listening. "Mrs. Miller," he said after his secretary let me in, "please have a seat." Coffee, tea. A coffee would be fine. He brewed 2 black coffees in an old percolator he kept on a side table. The aroma filled the office, mixing with the smell of old paper and polished wood. "Tell me everything," he said, handing me the steaming mug. "Take your time, I have all morning." And I told him, everything from the very beginning. I told him about Richard, my husband, who died 20 years ago, leaving me alone with a 13-year-old son and debts that took me 5 years to pay off. I told him about Vince, his chronic asthma, the sleepless nights with the nebulizer, the frantic rushes to the emergency room when he could not breathe, the emergency surgery that almost left me bankrupt. I told him about the 3 jobs I worked simultaneously for years, nursing by day, scrubbing floors at night, and selling baked goods on the weekends. I told him about the house bought in 2003 for $150,000 in the South Side neighborhood, when it was still developing, paid off over 15 years of pure sacrifice. I told him about Rachel, who appeared in Vince's life 3 years ago, beautiful and charming, at first calling me Mom, with a smile helping me in the kitchen, making me feel that I would finally have the daughter I never had. I told him about the small wedding 18 months ago, which I paid for almost entirely because Rachel's parents were going through financial difficulties. I told him about how little by little Rachel began to change. The passive-aggressive hints about the house being old, about the neighborhood not being good enough that her friends lived in the North Shore suburbs. The suggestions that I needed to modernize myself, to stop being so controlling. I told him about Vince, who somehow stopped being my son and just became Rachel's husband. That he stopped working 6 months after getting married because his boss was an idiot and he never seriously looked for a job again. That he spent his days playing PlayStation and watching TV shows while I worked double shifts. I told him about the yellow sticky notes. Attorney Pierce took notes in a leather notebook, his pen moving with speed but precision. He did not interrupt me a single time. He just nodded occasionally, making small sounds of understanding. When I finished, he took off his glasses and cleaned them with a white handkerchief from his suit pocket. "Mrs. Carroll," he finally said, his voice deep and calm, "do you have proof of what you are telling me? The labels are still there. I can take pictures." "That works. Anything else? Messages, emails, documents?" I hesitated. "I do not know if this counts, but I found something. On Saturday when they went out, I went into their room." "And what did you find?" I told him what I had not told anyone yet. How I had gone into Vince's bedroom, the room I cleaned every week because they never did, and I had seen the dresser drawer slightly open. I was not going to open it, I told the lawyer, and it was true. But I saw something shiny, the deed to my house. "The deed to your house was in your son's bedroom. Yes, the ones I kept locked in my personal filing cabinet. I do not know how they got them." Attorney Pierce leaned forward, his expression growing more serious. "What else was in that drawer?" "A promissory note." My voice cracked a little, but I continued. "A loan that I gave Vince 3 years ago for $100,000. "That is quite a bit of money." "I know." I closed my eyes, remembering. He had a plan, an auto parts import business with a friend. It was supposed to be his big break. He told me he would pay me back in 6 months with interest. That is why we did it in front of a notary, so he would see I was serious. And the business never worked out. The friend disappeared with part of the money. Vince never mentioned the loan again. And I never asked him about it because he was my son, and a mother does not collect on what she gives with love. "But it is a legal document," the lawyer said. "With that notarized note, you can claim that money. With 3 years of interest, we would be talking about $150,000. I finished the sentence. "I know I calculated it Saturday night. I could not sleep. Is there anything else I need to know?" I took a deep breath. I found bank statements for an account I did not know about in Vince's name, with regular deposits of $10,000 to $15,000 every single month. Where are those deposits coming from? From a company called Global Invoicing LLC. I do not know it. Vince told me he does not have a job. Attorney Pierce put his pen down and leaned back in his chair, his fingers interlaced over his desk. Mrs. Carroll, I need you to get me copies of all of that. The bank statements, the promissory note, any document related to that company. Because if it is what I think it is, what do you think it is? A shell company, to launder money or evade taxes. And if your son is involved, he is committing a federal crime. The floor moved beneath my feet. Prison. Potentially, yes. 5 to 10 years if the IRS investigates him and finds irregularities. I do not want him to go to prison, I said quickly. I just want my house back. I want them out. I want my life back. I understand. The lawyer picked up his pen again. So this is what we're going to do. First, the eviction. Since it is your property and they do not pay rent or have a lease legally, they are squatters. I can serve them with an immediate eviction notice with 72 hours to vacate. That fast. Yes, but it is going to get ugly, Mrs. Carroll. Your son is going to react your daughter-in-law too. Are you ready for that? I thought about the yellow sticky notes, about Vince telling me to find my own place, about 18 months of feeling invisible in my own house. I am ready. Second, the lawyer continued, the loan. We can demand immediate payment of the $150,000. If he cannot pay, we can seize his assets. He does not have any assets. He has absolutely nothing. Then it stays as a legal debt, which brings us to the third point, the money from the shell company. If we get those bank statements, I can use that as evidence that he has hidden resources. And also, he paused, we can use that information as leverage to negotiate. If he cooperates with the eviction, we do not report the suspicious activity to the IRS. If he fights, we bring everything to light. I did not like the idea of threatening my son, but I also did not like living like a stranger in my own home. How long will all this take? If they cooperate, a week. If they fight, it could be months, maybe a year. I do not have a year. Then we have to do it the fast way, shock and awe, as they say. We confront them with everything at once. We overwhelm them. We show them they have no way out. And what if that does not work? Attorney Pierce pulled several documents out of a drawer. Power of attorney, legal services contract, authorization to act on my behalf. I need you to sign here, and right here. I looked at the papers. My hand was shaking slightly over the pen, an antique Mont Blanc pen he had lent me, heavy and cold. Once you sign this, he said softly, there is no going back. Your son will know you are suing him, your daughter-in-law, as well. Things are going to change, Mrs. Carroll, forever. They already changed, I replied, a long time ago. It is just that I did not want to see it. I signed. My name, Carol Miller, widow, on every single page. The signature I had used for so many things throughout my life, my marriage license, Vince's birth certificate, the house deed, Richard's death certificate, countless hospital records. Now I was using it to sue my very own son. Very well. The lawyer put the papers away in a manila folder. I am going to prepare everything today. I can have the notices ready by tomorrow. When do you want us to serve them? What day is tomorrow? Tuesday. Then on Saturday, when they are at home, relaxed, off guard. Saturday at 10 in the morning. Perfect. We shook hands. The lawyer's grip was firm, warm, comforting. Mrs. Carroll, one last thing. Are you absolutely sure about this? Because once we walk down this path, it is going to be painful for everyone. I thought of Vince when he was a little boy. his terrified little eyes every time he could not breathe, his tiny hands clinging to me as if I were his only salvation. I thought of all the nights I stayed awake next to his bed, watching him breathe, praying he would not have another attack. I thought about the woman I used to be, strong, determined, capable of doing anything for her son. And I thought about the woman I had become. Invisible, silenced with yellow, sticky notes on my own food, I am sure. I walked out of the lawyer's office with a strange feeling in my chest. It was not happiness exactly, nor was it sadness. It was something more akin to liberation, like when you take off a shoe that has been pinching you all day and you can finally breathe. I walked through the busy streets of downtown Chicago, the city on a Monday at noon full of college students, tourists taking pictures of the historic architecture, street vendors offering hot dogs and soft pretzels. Life went on completely indifferent to my small personal revolution. I stopped at the old downtown church, that historic church with its stone walls and its golden altar. I am not particularly religious. After so many years of watching people die at the hospital, faith becomes complicated. But something made me step inside. The inside was cool and silent, with that specific peace you only find in old churches. I sat on one of the hard, uncomfortable wooden pews and looked at the altar. "I do not know if you are listening to me," I whispered. "But if you are, give me strength, because what I am about to do is going to break my family apart, and I need to know that it is the right thing." There was no answer. I did not expect there to be one, but something in the silence calmed me down. My cell phone buzzed. Patty. "Carol, I need you to come to the hospital, right now." "What happened?" "My cousin reviewed those bank statements you sent him. You have to see this." I took a taxi, an expense I normally avoided, but today I did not have the energy for the subway, and I arrived at the hospital in 20 minutes. Patty was waiting for me in the cafeteria with her cousin, Harvey, a thin man in his 40s with thick glasses and a serious expression. "Mrs. Carroll," he said without any preamble, "your son is in serious trouble?" He placed a laptop on the table and showed me a spreadsheet full of numbers. "This company, Global Invoicing LLC, is a front company. It is dedicated to issuing fake invoices so that other companies can deduct expenses that are not real. It is tax evasion. It is fraud. But does Vince know this? Ma'am, he signs the invoices. He has an account where he receives the money. He cannot say he did not know. Legally, he is an accomplice. If the IRS does an audit and finds this, your son could go to federal prison for 5 to 10 years. The world stopped yet again. "Are you sure?" "Completely. Look." He pointed at the screen. "These deposits right here every 2 weeks for amounts ranging from $10,000 to $15,000. They come from offshore accounts in Panama. That is another major red flag. International money laundering." Patty took my hand. "Carol, this is very bad." "What do I do?" The words came out small, terrified. "You do not do anything," Harvey said. "You have no responsibility in this but your son. He needs a lawyer right now." "He has one. I hired one." "No." Harvey shook his head. "That is your lawyer for the eviction. Your son needs a criminal defense attorney, someone specializing in tax crimes. But if I tell him, he is going to know that I was snooping around. He is going to know that his mother tried to save him," Patty interrupted. Again, just like always. That afternoon, I walked for hours through the streets of Chicago. I did not have a shift at the hospital. I did not have to be anywhere. For the first time in years, I had time to just think. I went up to the observation deck of the Willis Tower, that skyscraper that dominates the city. From way up there, Chicago looked small, manageable. Millions of people living their lives, each one with their own problems, their own battles. How many of them were dealing with ungrateful children? How many felt invisible in their own homes? How many had discovered that the people they loved the most were just using them? I bought a hot cocoa from a vendor at the top and sat on a bench watching the city stretch out beneath the fog. I had a massive decision to make. I could tell Vince about the illegal money, warn him, give him the chance to fix it before it was far too late, save them once again just like I had done his entire life. Or I could say absolutely nothing. Let the consequences of his actions catch up to him naturally. Use that information as leverage, just as Attorney Pierce had suggested, to get him out of my house without violence. What kind of mother was I if I let my son dig his own grave? But what kind of mother was I if I kept allowing myself to be trampled on? My phone rang. Vince. I stared at the screen for 3 rings before answering it. Welcome to our story, family. Mom, where are you? You did not come home after work. I am out. I had a few things to take care of. Oh, well. Okay, Rachel made beef stew. Are you coming for dinner? Beef stew. My recipe, with my ingredients probably covered in labels. I am not hungry. Mom. His voice softened, and for a moment he sounded like the Vince I used to know. I know things have been tense. Rachel and I talked. Maybe we went overboard with the labels. We can talk when you get here. Too little too late. I will be late. Do not wait up for me. I hung up the phone before he could answer. I got home at 9 in the evening. The house was dead silent. Vincent and Rachel were already in their bedroom. I could hear the muffled sound of their television. I went straight to my room, locked the door, and took out my laptop. For the next 3 hours, I organized everything methodically. I created a main folder, legal evidence, Vincent and Rachel, subfolders, labels, pictures of everything marked in the house, financial documents and bank statements, information on Global Billing LLC, the promissory note for the $150,000 loan, deeds, pictures of my house deeds that I found in their room, messages. I would need to get proof of the conversations about selling my car. Everything backed up in 3 places: my computer, a flash drive, and the cloud. By midnight, I had a complete file. Enough evidence not just to evict them, but to legally destroy them if I decided to do so. Power is a strange thing. For 18 months, I had not had any. Now with these files, I held all the power. The question was, what was I going to do with it? Wednesday dawned sunny, a rare rain-free day in Chicago. I got up early, put on my nursing scrubs, and before going down for breakfast, I did something I had not done in months. I really looked at myself in the mirror. 65 years old, hair more gray than black, deep wrinkles around my eyes and mouth, hands with age spots and scars from decades of hospital work, a body that had given birth, that had worked endlessly, that had endured. But I also saw something else. I saw a woman who had survived the death of her husband, who had raised a son all by herself, who had literally saved hundreds of lives in her career, who had bought a house with her own 2 hands, dollar by dollar. Is that me? I whispered to my reflection. Not what they say I am. Not the nuisance. Not the burden. Not the bitter mother-in-law. I am Carol Miller, and this is my house. I walked down the stairs with my head held high. In the kitchen, Rachel was making coffee. My coffee in my coffee maker, which still had her yellow label on it. "Good morning," I said with a smile. She turned around, surprised. "Good morning, Carol." "You know what?" I said, casually opening the fridge and taking out the block of cheddar cheese with her yellow label on it. "I have been thinking about the labels." "Yeah." Her tone was cautious. "Yes, you are right. It is good to know what belongs to who." I took a knife and cut a generous slice of the cheese. "So, I am going to start putting my own labels on everything that is mine." "Oh, well, okay. Starting with the house." I continued, my voice still light and conversational. "I am going to put a giant label on the front door. This house belongs to Carol Miller." "Really?" Her face changed. "You do not have to be sarcastic." "I am not being sarcastic. I am being clear, just like you." I bit into the cheese directly. No bread, no plate, just to see her reaction. Clarity. That is what you wanted, right? I do not know what is wrong with you lately, she muttered, going back to her coffee. What is wrong with me? I said, deliberately leaving the cheese on the table without a plate. Is that I finally understood something. In my own house, I make the rules, not you. I walked out before she could answer. On Thursday, something happened that snapped the very last thread of patience I had left. I got home after a 12-hour shift. A little girl with appendicitis, 2 motorcycle accident victims, an older man with a heart attack who did not make it. And I went straight to the fridge. I needed to eat something, anything. I opened the fridge. Empty. My side of the fridge, where I had put my unlabeled groceries that morning, whole wheat bread, ham, orange juice, yogurt, was completely empty. What the heck? I looked at the trash can. Right there in a clear black trash bag were all my things. The groceries I had bought that very morning thrown away like garbage. Looking for something. Rachel's voice came from the doorway. I turned around slowly. Very slowly. Did you throw away my food? It went bad. She shrugged. It smelled weird, and I did not want it to contaminate my fridge. I bought that this morning. This morning, Rachel, less than 12 hours ago. Well, I smelled it, and it was bad. Her tone was defiant now, seeing that I was not going to let it go. Besides, Carol, I already told you. If you want to store food by your own fridge, just like I did. I stared at the trash bag. $150 worth of groceries, a whole week of meals tossed out like it was nothing. And something inside me just broke. It was not dramatic. I did not scream, I did not cry. It was quieter than that, more final. It was the exact moment I decided there would be no more warnings, no more second chances, no more talking about it. On Saturday, when Attorney Parker arrived with the eviction papers, I would be ready, and this time there would be no turning back. On Friday, while Vincent and Rachel went out to look at apartments, another lie, they were probably just going to the mall. I did something I had been putting off. I cleaned. Not a normal cleaning, a deep, cathartic cleaning. I started in the bathroom. I peeled off every single yellow label one by one. The shampoo, the soap, the toothpaste, the toilet paper. I ripped them all off and threw them into a trash bag. Then the kitchen. The pots, the pans, the plates, the glasses, the silverware, every label one by one, ripped off, crumpled up, thrown away. My fridge, the cheese, the tomatoes, everything. I ripped off every single damn yellow label. And then I did something else. I opened Rachel's brand new fridge, the shiny Samsung she had bought to mark her territory, and I emptied its entire contents into the trash. Everything. The chicken, the steak, the expensive mozzarella cheese, the Greek yogurts, the organic fruits, the imported juices, the gourmet sauces, everything. Now you know how it feels, I whispered as I threw her food into the exact same bag where she had thrown mine the day before. Then I went up to my room and packed a suitcase. Clothes for a week, important documents, baby pictures of Vincent, my jewelry box with the few pieces I had left. Everything I did not want them to touch when things got ugly, because they were going to get ugly on Saturday, tomorrow. That evening I cooked dinner, Sunday pot roast, the meal Richard used to make on our anniversaries, the one Vincent had loved since he was a little boy, with carrots, roasted potatoes, onions, tender beef, and thick gravy. It took me 3 hours to prepare it, making it absolutely perfect. When Vincent and Rachel arrived, they smelled the food and looked at each other suspiciously. "What are we celebrating?" Vincent asked, confused. "Nothing." I smiled. "I just thought it had been a while since I cooked something special. Sit down." I served 3 generous plates. I set the table with a white tablecloth napkins and the candles I saved for special occasions. "Mom, are you okay?" Vincent looked at me with concern. "You have been acting weird all week." I am perfectly fine, son. I passed him the gravy boat. I just decided that there is no point in being angry anymore. Life is too short. We ate in an almost comfortable silence. The pot roast was perfect, the best I had made in years. Vincent asked for seconds. Even Rachel ate without complaining, although she did not say anything about the taste. After dinner, I washed the dishes while they watched television. Vincent came into the kitchen with his plate. "Mom, thank you for dinner. It was delicious. Just like the old days." "You are welcome, son." And I'm sorry about the labels. And what I said the other day about you finding your own place. I did not mean it. I was just stressed out. You know this is always your house. I looked at my son, 33 years old, taller than me now, heavier with gray hair starting to show at his temples. No longer the skinny little boy with asthma who could not climb the stairs without losing his breath. "I know," I said softly, and I meant it. This was my house. It always had been. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, Vincent." And it was true despite everything, despite the labels and the hurtful words and the 18 months of pain. I still loved him. But loving someone does not mean letting them destroy you. Saturday dawned with a clear sky, a bright sun shining through my window as if it were a normal day, but it was not. I got up at 6 in the morning. I showered. I dressed in my best clothes. Not my nursing scrubs, but a nice pair of black dress pants, a white blouse, and closed-toe shoes. I fixed my hair, put on a little lipstick. I looked at myself in the mirror, not as a tired nurse, not as a defeated mother, but as Carol Miller, the owner of this house, a woman who had survived worse than this. I went downstairs at 7 and made breakfast. Scrambled eggs with tomatoes and onions, buttered toast, hot cocoa and orange juice. Vincent came down at 8, rubbing his eyes, surprised to see the table set. "What is this?" "Breakfast. Sit down." "Mom, what is going on?" "You've been acting strange all week." "Nothing is going on. I just want to have breakfast with my son. Is that so weird?" Rachel came down at 8:30 in her pink silk robe, her hair a mess. She sat down without saying a word, eyeing me suspiciously. We ate. We talked about unimportant things, the weather, the news, the traffic in Chicago, just like a normal family on a normal Saturday. At 9:45, my phone rang. Attorney Parker. "Mrs. Miller, we are on our way. We will be there in 10 minutes. "Perfect." I hung up. Vincent was looking at me. "Who was that?" "Nobody important." I smiled. "I am expecting some visitors. They will be here in a few minutes." "Visitors on a Saturday?" "Yes, just something I need to take care of." Rachel and Vincent exchanged looks. At exactly 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I stood up, smoothed out my blouse, and took a deep breath. I will get it. And I walked to the door, knowing that once I opened it, everything would change. Forever. I opened the door. Standing there was Attorney Gary Parker, looking impeccable in his dark gray suit, holding a leather briefcase in one hand. Next to him was a younger man, maybe 30 years old, wearing glasses and holding a thick folder under his arm, the process server. "Good morning, Mrs. Miller," the attorney said in a clear, professional voice. "Good morning, Mr. Parker. Please come in." I let them inside. I could feel the tension in my chest, my heart beating like a drum, but my hands were steady. After a week of preparation, after 37 years of being a nurse in life or death situations, I knew how to keep my cool when everything was falling apart. Vincent walked out of the kitchen with a cup of coffee in his hand, looking completely confused. "Mom, who are these people?" Attorney Parker stepped forward, his voice echoing in the small entryway of my house. "Good morning. I am Attorney Gary Parker, a litigator specializing in civil and family law. I am here to formally serve Mr. Vincent Miller and Mrs. Rachel Davis with a legal lawsuit filed by Mrs. Carol Miller, widow and legal owner of this property." The silence that followed was absolute. Vincent dropped his cup. It shattered on the tile floor, the black coffee spreading like blood over the white ceramic. Rachel appeared from the kitchen, still in her silk robe, her face bare of makeup, her eyes narrowed. "What lawsuit are you talking about?" The process server. The young man with glasses opened his folder with precise mechanical movements. He pulled out several stapled official documents bearing seals and signatures. "Mr. Vincent Miller," he read in a monotone professional voice, "you are hereby formally notified of the following." He paused, looking directly at my son. 1. Immediate eviction from the property located at 4523 South 68th Street, Lincoln Park, Chicago, Illinois. You have 72 hours from this exact moment, 10 in the morning on Saturday, January 25th, to completely vacate the premises with all of your belongings. Vincent's voice cracked, high-pitched and full of disbelief. "Mom, what is this?" I did not answer. I just stood there with my back against the closed door, my arms crossed. The process server continued relentless. 2. A lawsuit for breach of contract regarding a documented loan. Notarized by the Cook County Notary File Number 2847, dated March 15, 2022. Original amount, $150,000. With accumulated interest over 34 months at the legal rate of 6% annually, the total amount owed comes to $227,000. 227. Rachel repeated the number like it was a foreign language. 3. A lawsuit for emotional distress, psychological abuse, and improper use of private property. Estimated compensation, $40,000. 4. An order to preemptively freeze all bank accounts under the name of the defendant, Vincent Miller, pending an investigation into the origin of funds from Global Billing LLC, which is suspected of tax evasion and potential money laundering. Vincent turned pale. Not a normal kind of pale, but that ashen gray color I had seen 1,000 times in the hospital, the color right before a total collapse. He stumbled backward, grabbing the doorframe to steady himself. "Mom," his voice was barely a whisper. "Mom, what did you do?" Finally, I spoke. My voice came out colder than I intended, but also much firmer. "I did what I had to do, Vincent. What I should have done months ago. This is insane." Rachel snatched the papers out of the process server's hands. Her eyes scanned the pages frantically, as if looking for a mistake, a way out. "You cannot sue us. We are your family." Family. I repeated the word slowly, letting it float in the air like toxic smoke. Family that put yellow labels on my own food. Family that planned to sell my house right from under me without me knowing. Family that threw away $150 of my groceries into the garbage. Family that told me to find another place to live. I paused. In my own house. "Mom, wait." Vincent took a step toward me, his hands reaching out in desperation. "We can talk about this. You do not have to do this, please." There is nothing left to talk about, Vincent. My voice did not shake. After a week of preparing, after 18 months of humiliation, after 37 years of saving lives while pushing through the pain, I knew exactly how to stand my ground. "You had 18 months to talk. You had 1,000 chances to treat me with respect, with basic dignity. You chose not to." Attorney Parker spoke up again, his voice calm, but with an edge of steel. "Mrs. Davis, Mr. Miller, you must understand that Mrs. Miller did not make this decision lightly. We have extensive documentation." He pulled a thick folder out of his briefcase. He opened it on the coffee table, spreading photographs like playing cards, pictures of the yellow labels. On the shampoo, on the toilet paper, on the forks, on my very own food. Pictures of the bank statements showing the regular deposits from Global Billing LLC. A copy of the notarized promissory note. My signature. Vincent's signature, $150,000 that he had never paid me back. And finally, something that made Rachel step back as if she had been physically struck. Printouts of text messages. "Rachel, I already talked to the realtor. This house is worth $850,000. Vincent. That is a lot of money, babe. Rachel. Exactly. Your mom is already old. When she dies, who is she going to leave the house to, you or me? I am an only child. Rachel. Why wait? Convince her to sell. Where did you get those messages? Rachel's voice was a venomous hiss. It does not matter where, the attorney answered. What matters is that they are real, time-stamped, and constitute evidence of a conspiracy to defraud an elderly citizen. It is not fraud, Rachel screamed. We were planning our future. Planning your future. I said, my voice so low it was almost a whisper. With my house, with my money, without my consent, all while making me feel like I was the problem. The doorbell rang again. We all turned to look. That must be Rachel's parents, the attorney said, checking his watch. I sent them a copy of the notice as well, since they are implicated in the pressure exerted on Mrs. Miller to abandon her property. Rachel rushed to the door. In walked her father, Mr. Arthur Davis, a large man with a thick mustache and a booming voice. Following right behind him was his wife, Mrs. Rose Davis, thin as a rail with overly bleached blonde hair. What on earth is going on here? Mr. Davis roared. We just got papers saying you are suing my daughter. I am not suing your daughter, I clarified. I am suing my son, and I am demanding that both of them vacate my property. Your daughter is included because she is a resident and because she actively participated in the abuse. Abuse. Mrs. Davis placed a hand over her chest dramatically. How dare you? My daughter has been a saint to you. She has taken care of you. She has cooked for you. Your daughter. I interrupted, my voice rising for the very first time. Put labels with her name on my food, on my soap, on my toilet paper, on the pots and pans I bought 20 years ago, on the silver forks I received as a wedding gift. She treated me like a trespasser in my own home. They were just labels, Rachel muttered. It is not that big of a deal. They were not just labels. The words ripped out of me like a scream, and everyone took a step back. Even I was surprised by the sheer force of my own voice. But 3 decades of keeping quiet, of being reasonable, of being the good mother-in-law, the good mother, it all exploded in that single moment. They were a message day after day, label after label, telling me that I did not belong here anymore, that in my own house, bought with my own blood and sweat, working triple shifts and sleepless nights, I was the intruder. They were a way of erasing me, of making me invisible until it would be so easy to push me out the door that I would not even fight back. The silence following my outburst was deafening. Mr. Davis cleared his throat, trying to regain his posture of authority. Look, Mrs. Miller, we are all upset here, but let's be reasonable. Vincent is your son, your only child. Are you really going to throw him out on the street? He told me to go find my own place, I replied. It seems only fair that he goes and finds his. Because we cannot keep living like this. Vincent finally exploded, his voice broken and desperate. Everything in this house has to be your way, your rules, your control. You decide everything. We are adults. Mom, Rachel, and I need space to be a couple, to make our own decisions. Space. My voice dropped back down, dangerously calm. You had the entire house, 3 floors, 2 bathrooms, a full kitchen. The only space I ever asked you to respect was my dignity. And you could not even give me that. Mom, I love you. You love me. I looked him dead in the eyes. Vincent, tell me, when was the last time you asked me how I was doing? When was the last time you noticed I came home after a 24-hour shift and offered me a glass of water? When was the last time you said, "Thank you, Mom, for letting us live here without paying a single dime"? Silence. Do you know how much I make? I continued. $8,000 a month. After 37 years as an ER nurse, do you know how much I spend on the bills for this house? $2,000? On groceries for 3 people, because you guys never buy food, $1,000 on gas, water, internet property taxes, another $1,500. I am left with barely anything for myself, for my clothes, for my transportation, for my medication. Because yes, I am 65 years old, I have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and my knees throb from standing on my feet 12 hours a day. Vincent opened his mouth, but no sound came out. And meanwhile, my voice cracked just a fraction, but I held it together. You were receiving $15,000 to $20,000 every single month from a ghost company, illegal money, and you never, not once, offered to help with the household expenses. Illegal money. Mr. Davis turned to Vincent. What is she talking about? Attorney Parker stepped in his tone, clinical and professional. Mr. Miller has been receiving regular deposits from a company called Global Billing, LLC. Our analysis indicates it is a shell corporation that issues fake invoices to allow for fraudulent tax deductions. In simple terms, tax evasion and potential money laundering. Mr. Davis's face went from red to purple. Vincent, is this true? I did not know it was illegal. Vincent stammered. A buddy of mine offered me the job. I just had to sign some invoices. He told me it was completely legal just to optimize taxes for big corporations. Optimize taxes, the attorney repeated with a hint of sarcasm. With deposits coming from offshore accounts in Panama, from a company with no physical offices, no registered employees, and no actual commercial activity. Panama. Rachel took a step back as if she physically wanted to distance herself from Vincent. You told me it was a consulting job. You told me it was completely legitimate. I thought it was. Vincent ran his hands through his hair, pulling at the roots in sheer desperation. Oh my God, could I go to jail? If the IRS investigates and finds evidence of knowing participation in tax fraud? The attorney nodded. Yes, anywhere from 5 to 10 years in federal prison, plus fines that could amount to 3 or 4 times the defrauded amount. Vincent collapsed onto the sofa, burying his head in his hands. This is all your fault. Rachel turned to me, her eyes blazing with fury. You investigated him. You dug up all this dirty information and now you are going to destroy him. I did not destroy him, I replied with deadly calm. He destroyed himself. I merely brought to light what he was already hiding. You are his mother, Rachel screamed. You are supposed to protect him. I did protect him. My voice rose again. I protected him for 33 years. When he was 5 years old and almost choked to death during an asthma attack, I paid the hospital bill by selling my car. When he was 11 and needed emergency surgery, I sold my jewelry, took out loans, and worked 3 jobs at the same time. When he was 18 and wanted to study engineering, I paid his college tuition for 5 years, even though he never graduated because it was not his thing. When he was 30 and came to me with a business plan that needed $150,000, I gave him my entire life savings from the last 10 years. I walked over to Vincent and knelt in front of him so he had to look me in the eye. I protected you so much, my sweet boy, that you never learned how to protect yourself. I saved you so many times that you never learned that actions have consequences. I loved you so much that I stopped you from growing up. Tears were streaming down Vincent's cheeks. Mom, I am sorry. I am so sorry. I know. I touched his face. That face I knew better than my own. And I am sorry, too. Because if I had been a better mother, I would have let you fall years ago. I would have taught you how to pick yourself back up. I stood up and turned to Attorney Parker. What are the options? Legally, they have 72 hours to vacate. If they do not do so voluntarily, we will request a forced eviction with police assistance. The lawsuit regarding the loan will proceed regardless. The IRS investigation may or may not proceed depending on whether the suspicious activity is reported. What do you want, Mom? Vincent looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. What do I have to do? I thought carefully before answering. I had rehearsed this moment for days, but now that I was here, the words were harder to say than I had imagined. I want you out of my house. Both of you. This week. We have nowhere to go, Rachel whispered. You have your parents. I pointed at Mr. and Mrs. Davis. You have friends. You have options. What you do not have is the right to stay here. And the money? Vincent asked. The $227,000. How am I supposed to pay you that? I do not know, I answered honestly. But you signed a legal document. It is your responsibility. But if I go to jail for that global billing thing, then you should have thought about that before signing fake invoices for quick cash. It sounded harsh. It was harsh, but it was the truth. Attorney Parker cleared his throat. Mr. Miller, Mrs. Davis, let me be perfectly clear. Mrs. Miller has an airtight case. She has documentary, photographic, and testimonial evidence. If this goes to trial, you will lose. And you will lose in a very public, very expensive, and very humiliating way. He paused, letting the reality sink in. However, Mrs. Miller is not vindictive. She does not want to destroy you. She merely wants her life, her house, and her dignity back. For that reason, I am authorized to offer you a deal. Vacate the premises voluntarily within 72 hours. Leave the house clean and undamaged. And Mrs. Miller will consider she does not guarantee withholding the report of the suspicious activity to the tax authorities. You are blackmailing me. Vincent stood up. It is not blackmail, the attorney said coldly. It is an option. Mrs. Miller has information regarding criminal activity. She has the legal right to report it. She is choosing not to under certain conditions. That is not blackmail. That is mercy. Vincent looked at me. Would you really do that? Would you send me to prison? I do not want you to go to prison, Vincent. I want you to grow up. I want you to take responsibility for your own life. But if I have to choose between your growth and my own destruction, I left the sentence hanging in the air. Rachel picked up her purse from the sofa. Her hands were shaking. I cannot believe you are doing this, she sneered at me. After everything I sacrificed for this family? She stopped because we both knew there had been no sacrifice on her end. There was no sacrifice. There was no love. There was only calculation. Let's go, Vincent. We are going to my parents' house. No. Vincent did not move. I am not going anywhere until we figure this out. Figure what out? Rachel snapped, turning to face him. Your mother is throwing us out on the street. She is threatening us with prison. There is nothing left to figure out. She is my mother, Rachel, and I am your wife, or at least I was until she decided to destroy our marriage. I did not destroy anything, I said calmly. You two did that all on your own. I just stopped holding up the house of cards. Rachel shot me a look of pure hatred. You know what, you are right. Vincent is never going to grow up as long as you are breathing down his neck. You are always going to be the martyr, the one who sacrificed everything, the saintly mother who never did anything wrong. She turned back to Vincent. I am giving you a choice, sweetheart. Either you come with me right now, we leave this drama behind and we find a way to move forward together. Or you stay here on your knees in front of your mother and watch her get her way yet again. Vincent looked back and forth between Rachel and me. His face was a map of pure agony. Rachel, please do not make me choose. I am not making you choose. She is making you choose. I am simply telling you that if you choose to stay here, if you do not defend me right now, if you let her do this to us without putting up a fight, then I cannot do this anymore. I did not sign up for this. The silence stretched on. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall, the distant sound of traffic outside, the sound of my own heart thumping in my ears. Vincent finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. My mother is right, Rachel, about everything. The labels were cruel. Living here rent-free was abusive. Planning to sell her house behind her back. Oh my God, what were we thinking? We were thinking about our future. Rachel shot back, though her voice had lost its sting. No, you were thinking about your future. I was just going along with it because it was easier than standing up to you, or standing up to myself. Vincent turned back to me. Mom, I need time. I need time to think, to figure this all out. Will you give me a week, just 1 week, to find a place to find a job to start fixing my life? I looked at Attorney Parker. He gave a slight nod. The decision was mine. 1 week, I said finally. But under these conditions, no alcohol. You look for a job every single day. You pay me something to stay here, even if it is just $500. And you start seeing a therapist, because you and I have issues that run way deeper than this house. Okay, whatever you say. And the loan? I will pay you back. I do not know how, but I will pay it back. Every single dollar. Rachel let out a bitter laugh. You are pathetic, both of you. She marched toward the door, her parents following right behind her. At the threshold, she turned around one last time. When you get tired of being her little lapdog, Vincent, when you finally realize that you are never going to be good enough for her no matter what you do, do not call me. I have had enough. And she walked out. The door slammed shut behind her with a bang that echoed through the entire house. Mr. and Mrs. Davis lingered for a moment, looking at Vincent with a mix of pity and absolute disgust before trailing after their daughter. We were alone. Vincent, myself, the attorney, and the process server. Mrs. Miller, the attorney said smoothly, would you like me to proceed with drawing up divorce papers as well, given that Mrs. Davis has abandoned the marital home? Vincent cut him off. No, not yet. Let me process this first. The attorney nodded. As you wish. I will leave the original documents right here. You now have a modified deadline of 1 week per verbal agreement for voluntary eviction. The loan repayment is temporarily paused, but not canceled. And regarding Global Billing, LLC, he looked at me. I will not report anything, I said firmly, as long as Vincent closes that account immediately and does not accept another dime from that company. I will do it, Vincent promised. Today. After the attorney and the process server left the house, settled into a heavy, thick silence. Vincent sat on the sofa with his head in his hands. I stood by the window, staring out at the street where Rachel had just disappeared into her parents' car. Mom, would you really have sent me to prison? I closed my eyes. I do not know, Vincent. Honestly, I do not know. Let's just hope we never have to find out. I am sorry for everything, for the labels, for what I said, for the money, for all of it. I know. Are you ever going to forgive me? I turned to look at him. My son, my baby, the little boy who almost died so many times. The shy teenager, the young man full of dreams, the man who had completely lost his way somewhere down the line. I already forgave you, Vincent, days ago. But forgiveness does not mean things go back to the way they were. It means we can build something new, something different, something healthier. What is going to happen to me? I do not know. But for the very first time in your life, you are going to have to figure that out all by yourself, without me saving you, without me bailing you out. I am scared. I know, I am too. I sat down next to him on the sofa, making sure to leave some space between us. But fear is a good thing sometimes. It keeps you alert. It makes you think before you act. The following days were strange. On Tuesday, Vincent woke up at 6 a.m, something he had not done in months. He took a shower, dressed in nice clothes, and printed out 50 copies of his resume at an internet cafe. I saw him walk out the door with a folder under his arm, and something in my chest loosened just a bit. On Wednesday, he came back with 3 interviews lined up. one at a hardware store, another at an auto parts shop, and one at a call center. On Thursday, he got the job at the hardware store, $3,000 a month. It was not a lot, but it was something. It was a start. On Friday, he handed me an envelope. Inside was $1,500 in cash. "It is for this week," he said. "500 for rent, like you asked, and $1,000 to help out with the bills." "Vincent, you just got the job. You have not even been paid yet." I asked for an advance, and I sold my gaming console. I looked down at the envelope in my hands, crinkled bills that had probably been counted and recounted a dozen times. "Thank you. And this too." He handed me another piece of paper. It was a handwritten payment plan on lined notebook paper. "I can pay you $1,000 a month. With that, in 19 years, I will finish paying off the $227,000. I know it is a long time, but it is the best I can do right now." I looked at the piece of paper. The math was actually correct. 19 years. Vincent would be 52 years old by the time he paid me back. "Son, I know. It is my responsibility. That is what you taught me. Debts must be paid." On Saturday, exactly 1 week after he was served the papers, Vincent packed up his things. He did not have much. His clothes, some books, his old laptop. The gaming console was gone. The giant flat-screen television he had bought with the illegal money, he decided to leave behind. "I do not want anything from that dirty money," he had said. He had found a room to rent on the South Side, an older but safe neighborhood in Chicago. 130 square feet, a shared bathroom, a communal kitchen, $800 a month. "It is nothing fancy," he admitted, "but it is mine. Nobody is handing it to me. Nobody is lending it to me. It is all mine." I helped him pack. It was surreal folding his clothes and boxing up his life just like when he went off to college all those years ago. But this time was different. This time he was not moving into an all-expenses-paid dorm room. He was walking into the real world. At 3 in the afternoon, a buddy's pickup truck pulled into the driveway. Vincent had paid him $100 for the ride. Together, they loaded up the boxes. Vincent stood in the doorway looking back at the house where he had grown up, where he had lived his entire life. Except for those 2 years of college, he never finished. "This house holds so many memories," he said softly. "It still does, and it will always be your home, Vincent, but under different terms now." "I know. Can I come visit you? Every Sunday, for lunch if you want." "I do." We stood there, mother and son, with decades of heavy history hanging between us. All the love, all the pain, all the mistakes, all the sacrifices. Vincent opened his arms. I hesitated for only a second before stepping into them. We hugged each other for the first time in months. It was not like the hugs from when he was a little boy, when he used to cling to me like I was his anchor in a storm. This hug was different. It was balanced. 2 adults acknowledging the pain they had caused each other, but choosing to move forward anyway. "Thank you, Mom." "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For loving me enough to let me fall. For being strong enough for the both of us when I could not do it for myself." "Vincent, I have to thank you too." "Me why?" "For finally making me realize that helping you does not always mean saving you. Sometimes it means letting you face your own consequences." He pulled back and wiped his eyes. "I will see you on Sunday, right at noon. I will make Sunday pot roast, my favorite." "I know." He climbed into the passenger seat of the truck. I watched it drive down 68th Street, turn the corner, and disappear into the Saturday afternoon traffic. I stood in the doorway until I could not see the truck anymore. Then I walked back inside. My house, empty now, quiet, but completely mine. Sunday, 6 months later. I set the table for 3 people, a crisp white tablecloth. The cloth napkins I saved for special occasions, lit candles, fresh flowers I picked up from the farmer's market. The pot roast was bubbling on the stove, filling the house with that warm, comforting smell of a family Sunday. At exactly noon, the doorbell rang. I opened the door. Vincent stood there with a clean shirt, a fresh haircut, and a cleanly shaven face. He looked great. Tired since he was working 6 days a week at the hardware store, but great. Like a grown man, not a little boy. And standing right next to him was a woman I did not recognize. Mom, this is Lauren. Lauren Roberts. The woman was maybe 30 years old, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing blue jeans and a white blouse. She was holding a cardboard box. "It is so nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Miller. Vincent talks about you all the time." Her voice was warm and entirely genuine. "I brought a strawberry shortcake. I baked it at my bakery." "You own a bakery?" "Yes, ma'am. Rosie's Bakery down on the south side. Vincent comes in every morning for his black coffee. That is how we met 3 months ago." "Is that so?" I looked at my son. He flashed a brilliant, authentic smile, not the tense, guilty smirk he had worn for so long. "I really wanted you to meet her mom. Lauren she is special. She is different." "Different how?" Lauren answered for him with a blunt honesty that I liked instantly. "I work hard, ma'am. I built my business entirely from the ground up. I do not expect anyone to solve my life for me, and I am not interested in men who are looking for mothers. I am interested in men who are looking for true partners." "I understand," I said, and it was the absolute truth. I understood perfectly. I invited them inside. We ate lunch, we talked. Lauren told me all about her bakery and her plans to open a second location. Vincent talked about how he had just been promoted to shift supervisor at the hardware store, about the night classes he had started taking for accounting, about the therapist he went to see every single week. "And Rachel?" I finally asked, not because I actually cared, but because I needed to know that chapter was closed for good. "She signed the divorce papers last month. She married some other guy last week, an older guy with money." Vincent shrugged his shoulders. "I genuinely wish her the best." And based on the tone of his voice, I knew he meant it. After lunch, Lauren and Vincent washed the dishes together. I watched them from the living room, working as a team, laughing at something he said while she splashed him with soapy water. And for the first time in years, maybe decades, I felt real peace. Not the fake peace of pretending everything was okay, but the true deep peace that comes after a hurricane, when the wreckage has been cleared and you can finally see what is left standing. That evening, after Vincent and Lauren had gone home, I sat in my living room with a hot mug of chamomile tea. The house was dead quiet, but it was no longer the heavy, suffocating silence of the months I lived with Rachel and Vincent. It was a clean, peaceful silence. I pulled out my old photo album and turned the pages slowly. Richard and I on our wedding day. So young, so full of big dreams. Baby Vincent. Little Vincent with his asthma inhaler, his big eyes wide and terrified. Vincent graduating from high school, and then the newer pictures on my phone. Vincent on his very first day of work at the hardware store. Vincent and Lauren both smiling brightly in front of her bakery. Vincent just 2 weeks ago handing me an envelope with his monthly payment. Exactly on time for the 6th month in a row. "You are almost there, my sweet boy," I whispered to the photo. "You are almost the man I know you can be." My phone buzzed, a text message from Vincent. "Thank you for lunch, Mom. Lauren says you are incredible. She is right. I love you." I smiled and typed back, "I love you too, son. I will see you next Sunday." If you are listening to this story right now and someone has made you feel invisible in a house that you built in a life that you created, I want you to know something. You are not being dramatic. You are not being selfish. You are not being cruel. You are just being human. And human beings deserve basic dignity. Love does not mean enduring abuse. Sacrifice does not mean erasing yourself from existence. Being a mother, being a father, being a son, being a husband. None of those roles require you to become a martyr. Sometimes loving someone means letting them fall. It means allowing the consequences of their own actions to catch up with them. It means setting boundaries even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. And yes, you might lose people in the process. Your family might break apart. People might call you selfish, bitter, or cruel. But the alternative, disappearing piece by piece, yellow label by yellow label until you do not even recognize the woman looking back at you in the mirror, that is no alternative at all. That is total surrender. I am 65 years old. I have worked 37 long years saving lives. And I have learned one fundamental truth. You cannot save anyone who does not want to be saved, not even your own flesh and blood. But you can save yourself. And sometimes, saving yourself is exactly what ends up saving everybody else.